Hi everyone, and welcome to Bob's Wood Stuff. Today I'm going to show you how to make this tomato cage out of redwood, which is a good complement to the raised planter box from my other video. There are downloadable plans available in the description of both videos. Let's go to the shop. The first thing I did was take some scraps of redwood fence boards and rip them on the table saw to 5/8 inch by 5/8 inch square. I needed 4 of them at 32 inches long and 12 of them at 14 inches long, so I made sure to rip enough length for those pieces. I then miter sawed them to their final lengths, gang cutting them 4 at a time to make the process faster. I also cut a 45-degree angle on the bottom of the legs to make them sharp for poking into the dirt. Here are all the pieces laid out. Now I need to make the dado cuts for the half-lap joints, so I'm swapping out my table saw blade for a 5/8 inch wide dado stack. The stack is 5/8 inch wide to accommodate the whole width of the square piece. I pulled out my old crosscut sled, which is now my dado sled because the opening is so wide. Then I set the height of the blade to 5/16 inches, which is half the thickness of the square stock. I set up a stop block to get consistent cuts on the ends of all the rail pieces and proceeded to cut off one side on each end. Be careful not to bump the stop block too hard, as this can shift its position. Now it was time to cut the legs. This is more complicated because there are dados cut on 2 adjacent sides of the leg. Follow the plans carefully, as these legs are not all the same. I set the stop block to cut a dado 1 inch from the end. Then I set the stop block to 2 1/4 inches and cut the adjacent side on the legs. Marking the cuts beforehand with a pencil saves a lot of time and confusion for this part. Once all the dados were cut, I assembled 2 opposite sides of the frame as sub-assemblies. Some of the half-lap joints fit snugly, and others I needed to shave down with a block plane to sneak up on a perfect fit. Because this tomato cage is going outdoors, I used Titebond 3 due to its waterproof properties. I brushed a small amount of glue on each joint and then assembled them and clamped them together. Once the glue had dried for about an hour on the sub-assemblies, I glued the remaining pieces to the sides, connecting the 2 parts to make a cage. The square shoulders on the half-lap joints will keep the frame square and prevent it from racking. In order to reinforce the joints, I put 2 staples into each lap joint. This gave them some extra mechanical strength, so they don't rely solely on the glue to hold the joints together. I used a staple gun, which worked but was a bit difficult. I recommend using a pneumatic stapler if you have one. That would make the job much easier. Now that I have this frame built and the glue is dry, I can put it around my tomato plant. First I'll remove the stake that was there already and place my tomato cage directly over it, being careful not to harm any of my other plants. I'll just work the legs down until it's pretty snug in there. And then just bend all your branches so that they rest on these. This is a little easier to do when your plant has not been watered yet for the day. It's a little bit more flexible. So this was a really good project. I needed something to support my tomato plant, and a normal cage just wouldn't fit in my planter box the way I wanted it to, and this one also matches because it's redwood like the planter box. I hope you enjoyed it, and please like and subscribe.